Welcome back to the 20-Minute Investor Podcast, the show where we teach time-strapped professionals how to build wealth through real estate and small business investing in just 20 minutes a day without sacrificing their job or their family life. Before we jump into today's episode, I want to provide some context. Today, we're going to show you what the 20-Minute Investor System actually looks like in real-life application. What you're about to hear is a live presentation my wife Andrea and I gave at Michael Zuber's One Rental at a Time conference in Las Vegas. We talked through our entire journey, including how we started, the mistakes we made, many of which were avoidable, and how we kept family front and center during a time of major growth and change in our lives. We share how we built a portfolio of 8 cash-flowing rental properties across 3 states by implementing the 20-minute investor approach, all while working full-time and bringing 3 young children into the world. Getting to deliver this presentation together with my wife on Valentine's Day on stage in Las Vegas, no less, which is where our investing journey began back in 2017, was a pretty surreal and full-circuit moment for us. So this one's a little longer than normal, and the audio will sound a bit different since it's from a live event, but you'll hear the key themes and lessons we picked up from 9 years of investing, all packed into the next 50 minutes. Now let's get into it.
All righty, folks. This presentation that's coming up, here's my guess about the presentation coming up, and I mean this with 100% certainty. There's probably going to be 5 people in this room that this will be the most impactful presentation of your life. How can I say that? I have talked to so many people over the last 8 years, and I want to say 15 to 20% of you have a passion project. You want to do something that you perceive as bigger than you. Anybody willing to raise their hand and say, yeah, that's me? Yeah, I know there's people out there. The presentation you're going to get is from somebody who had that passion and then did it. So let's welcome to the stage Aaron and Andrea.
It's an honor to be here. We're really excited to share with you. Our presentation today is going to be about how to build a real estate business that supports your life and empowers you towards your passion. My name's Aaron Amin.
And I'm Andrea Amin, and I do just want to add, thank you so much for being here. Aaron is a member of this community. This is my first time here, and it's truly such an honor, and all of the speakers today have been so impressive, so I have no idea how I'm going to follow that, but thank you so much.
We've been happily married for 8 years now and together for 13. We have 3 beautiful young children, 4-year-old daughter and 2 identical twin boys, 2 years old. We built a portfolio of 8 rental properties in our first 5 years across 3 different states while working full-time and raising our family. And now in 2026, as Zuber alluded to, we are focused on our passion project. We are developing 2 luxury assisted living homes in Houston, Texas, where we live, and we'll share a lot more about that shortly.
Also, during that time, we moved across the country a few times. We were also working in the entertainment industry, both of us. Aaron was a booker for a large entertainment company. I worked for their nonprofit organization. So parallel paths, we actually worked next to each other for a little while, just coincidentally. And working in the music industry is it's not an easy industry to balance other things with. The hours are quite extreme. And I know that a lot of you guys are in the same boat right now. You're working and you're trying to build a real estate portfolio to help grow your wealth. So we hope to be able to share our story today and share some of the things that we've learned along the way so that it doesn't feel so daunting and maybe you can learn something and it'll make your life a little bit easier. We were also building a family. And at first, it was hard for me to think about all of that holistically and think about how all of those things made me a complete person. Doing things in different arenas didn't make us scattered. It actually meant that we were building a hybrid identity. And so that's another theme of today's talk.
So one of the themes through this whole day of listening to other people talk, and also very much true in our story, is that none of what we've done so far in our journey is through perfect action. There is no such thing as perfect action. We took bold steps in the beginning, even at times we didn't feel like we were ready. And it was through imperfect action, resilience, and an undying and unconditional commitment to each other that allowed us to be where we are on this journey and chart this exciting course ahead. So whether you're buying your first rental property, which I think earlier people raise their hands, there's several people still working on their first. Or if you already have a portfolio and you're interested in aligning to your passion, this talk was meant specifically for you.
And we're not going to tell you what to invest in, but we do hope to give you some ideas of how you can build a portfolio that reflects you, reflects your goals, reflects your life. And what I have found is that has allowed me to pursue this passion project that is now going to help us unlock our goals at the same time.
So a lot of people, when they heard that we worked in the largest entertainment company in the world in the concerts industry, they picture the bright lights and the glamorous concerts and all that. But this is a picture of the office that Andrea and I shared, if you could call it that. We like to refer to it as the supply closet in the back corridors of Mandalay Bay. But
No windows. There were no windows.
I had that desk in the back by the whiteboard, and she had the one on the other side of the big glob of boxes and the hiding person. But this was a very interesting period of our life. We were both overworked completely. We were we felt underpaid compared to the value we were producing. And this was in Las Vegas, so this is right down the street here. For 5 years straight, we were working really, really hard and ultimately led to a lot of burnout. For me, my job was, I was Monday through Friday, normal office hours. And then I would be out at shows 3, 4, sometimes 5 nights a week, sometimes multiple shows in a single night. And if you do the math, being in your mid-20s, working 5 years in the concerts industry, you can probably picture what my lifestyle was like. And I ran myself into the ground in many, many different ways. By 2019, on year 5, I was physically, spiritually, emotionally, more or less bankrupt. And I had picked up a lot of bad habits along the way. And long story short, I ended myself in an inpatient rehab for alcohol abuse. And that was a real turning point in our lives. Not only the lives we were building together, but I had to do a lot of reflection about what caused me to go down that path. And through that reflection, one of the most important things that came away was that no matter how hard we worked or how many hours we put in or how much energy and investment we made into our employer, our upside was capped. There was a ceiling pressing against our head. And we felt like even though we had so much value we were offering, we weren't able to really own our upside. And that concept of owning our upside is something that really drove the next chapter of our life, which naturally led to real estate investing. This is a true way that, of course, everyone in this room, I assume, has bought into the idea that buying rental properties, buying real estate, finding ways to add value, running them over a long period of time successfully will build your wealth. And it'll build your wealth in a way that you can capture that extra value you're adding. So we didn't know a whole lot of anything about real estate when we started. We had a very, very advanced underwriting process for the very first rental property that we bought, if you're ready for it. The rent was higher than the mortgage, and that was it.
That's what you need, right?
Yeah.
You're going to make more in rent than you're going to pay in the mortgage. I mean, and we were new home owners too, so I didn't even understand CapEx. What is CapEx? And appliances break? What's the lifespan on an air conditioner? I was not thinking that way at all.
But back to the imperfect action, right? We did find a home that was newly rebuilt. There was very little maintenance or any type of headaches to deal with. We just needed to buy it, get a tenant in, and start collecting that rent. And we're really glad we did. If we knew what we know now, including what everyone in this room probably knows if you've taken any of Zuber's courses or analyzed the deal, we never would have bought this property. And when I think about that, it horrifies me because if we never bought that property, there's a whole chain of events. There's a whole stack of dominoes that tipped over when we did that led us to where we are today, and I have no idea where we would be if we hadn't. So everyone in this room falls somewhere on this dial. On one side, you have analysis paralysis, which I think if anybody in here wants to pretend that they haven't had analysis paralysis, I will gladly call you out. Even if you've conquered that, as many of us have, by taking action, this is a feeling that we can all relate to. It's when you are faced with a decision, whether it's consequential or not, and you just can't figure out how to kind of get over the hump and get out of maybe land into either a yes or a no. And that's something we dealt with in the very beginning. But there's also the other side, which is a bias for action. And a bias for action, sometimes we envy people that have this because they can take that imperfect action in ways that sometimes, it puzzles people because maybe there's no regard for the consequence, or maybe they haven't thought through this and that. But at the end of the day, when we stare at the people who have taken action and we're still waiting on the sideline, you haven't started the clock yet. And time only moves one way. I'm not advocating for people to take, reckless actions, but I do believe that it's an important thing to get to know yourself and your own tendencies and where you fall on the spectrum, and also tap into the enormous, incredible network of people around you that can help you get past that analysis paralysis. So once again, I'm just going to reiterate that imperfect action is going to beat perfect preparation every time, because there is no such thing as perfect. If you're waiting for that risk to drop to zero to feel comfortable and confident moving forward, that day will never come. I don't say that to scare anybody. I say it because it's the truth. I think, there's never going to be the right moment, and I encourage everyone to lean into the imperfection. One such example of this, that first rental property that we bought with our super advanced proprietary underwriting formula, once we had it stabilized for a few months, we got this email from the agent who sold it to us. And this was, he had taken a liking to us. He got to know us. He knew that, I had just gone through this big transformational kind of turnaround moment in my life, and that we were trying to build a life with our family and aim towards the future. And so he sent this to us seemingly out of the blue. And it was 2 homes that were being sold off market right here in Las Vegas. They were each leased to an assisted living operator. We'll talk more about that strategy in a minute. And they were on 5-year leases, paying 40% above market rent. There was no vacancy, and they were being sold, again, off market and even under value. There were partners that wanted to get out. It was an absolute unicorn opportunity. And even though we had no inclination that we were going to continue buying rentals at that pace, we recognized that opportunity, even with our unsophisticated eyes. And so we found a way, we maneuvered our way in to be able to take advantage of that opportunity. And it really, really changed the entire course of our life in many, many ways. And a lot of people might look at this email and say, well, that's really nice that you got lucky being, in the right place at the right time, and, this thing fell into your lap. And to that, I would say that, we really believe that, of course, there is an element of luck in any of these situations, but action that you take, especially compounded over a long period of time, expands the surface area of the luck that you will receive. And so I challenge everyone to think about luck a little bit differently next time it happens to you. You put yourself in the situations that you're in. There's only so much you can control, but the actions that you take lead to the luck that you will have. This is a picture of those 2 homes. You would never in a million years know that they were leased to an assisted living operator. We got a chance to tour them and see that they were providing 24/7 support for adults with developmental disabilities. Is a very needed service. I have people in my family that could have benefited from such a service had we even known it existed. But I had only ever heard of assisted living in the context of these nasty big box facilities. And it was a totally different experience. It was really shocking when we walked in to see that this existed. And so these are, if you drive by on the street, you would have no idea, right? But we were grateful to be able to buy these properties. And one kind of footnote on these is that this was, again, 4 months after we had bought our first rental property. We got 3 days from the closing table, and the lender that we were working with pulled out at the last second. Our contract was set to expire 2 days after that. And so we had no experience to lean on, nothing to understand how to navigate it. We sat, I thankfully consulted with my parents. I consulted with anybody who could kind of give us any directional guidance on what to do. We talked to lawyers. We spent a bunch of money. Long story short, we saved the transaction, and we were able to close on this, which once again had an absolute domino effect in our life. That theme is going to present itself again in much higher stakes.
So here we were in 2020. We now had 3 rentals in Vegas. We were living in Vegas, working in the concert industry, burnt out, overworked, underpaid, and then COVID hit. And Las Vegas was particularly affected by COVID. Aaron got furloughed like almost right away. I was able to work remotely, but all of our programs revolved around the concert industry. So I had no idea what was going to be happening with my job. And we knew that we wanted to start a family soon. And we were in a space where we can't have Aaron not working without income for too long. So Aaron was really, really smart. And if you know Aaron, you know that he's a go-getter. You know that he has a bias for action. So he did not wait around very long. And he actually secured a new job during COVID. And he started consulting for a consulting firm. And we had family in Washington. And he was able to find work in Washington with the consulting firm. So we decided to move to Washington. I was gonna remain working remotely for the organization. We turned our primary home in Vegas into a rental. So we now had 4 rentals, and they were all remote. So we had kind of stumbled into remote property management that way. Luckily, we were able to find a good property manager, and the 2 care homes are pretty stable. So we realized, wow, we can do this. We wanted to keep growing our portfolio, but the Pacific Northwest, that market was too high priced for us. But we had realized, okay, we can do this remotely. So let's identify a market that we can get in, a market that we believe in. And we did a lot of research, different markets around the country, and we found a market in Iowa called the Quad Cities. It's a couple cities on Iowa and a city on the Illinois side. It's right on the Mississippi River. Stable market, appreciating, on an average rate. And we were able to build a small portfolio there. We found a property manager that we liked. We definitely went through some pain points. A lot of things went wrong, but we stuck with it. So then we had remote rentals in 2 different markets. And we realized that we really had to start building systems and processes to allow us to do this while we were still working. We needed to build our business in a way that it didn't take over our life, it fit into it. And Aaron did a lot of the groundwork, building these systems out. He's really great at that. We needed simple weekly frameworks that we could repeat time and time again. And we needed to identify tech tools that actually saved us time and energy. So a couple examples of that. We started using Stessa, and we actually started using VAs as well. And so that really helped us kind of have an easier time doing this alongside our work. And of course, life was still happening during this time. We got pregnant with twins, and that was a surprise. And we moved across the country again to make sure that we would have the support that we needed to take care of them. Aaron's dad has lived in Houston for 30 years, so we moved to Houston. And he's really involved with the kids, so that was amazing. And during that time, over time, that whole time, I was becoming very disenchanted with W-2 work, working in nonprofits, underpaid, working a lot, over 50 hours a week when I was full-time. But at the end of COVID, I got unexpectedly laid off. And I know that sounds like an oxymoron because it was COVID, but I had been working with my organization to restructure it and go into a new role, basically, for months. And then one morning they called me and they said I was laid off. My supervisor didn't even know I was going to be laid off. I didn't get a good severance package. This was the time that unemployment was not even taking people's phone calls. I was so scared. I found out that we were pregnant with our first kid during that time. So that experience, I just stopped wanting to rely on someone else to feed me. You know what I mean? I wanted to take control. Just what we brought up earlier, own your upside. That's what I wanted to do. So I decided to leave my W-2. After my daughter was born, I was a stay-at-home mom for her, and then I got a text message from my old supervisor that was still at the organization. She offered me part-time work. At the time, I took it because it was an offer. It was like, okay, let's do this. And I did that for a year or two, a couple years maybe. But then I decided, you know what? I want to go all in on our business. I want to own our upside. So it was not a decision that we made on a whim. We were really strategic about it, and we aligned on our vision, our roles, and the risk that we were taking. It was, at this time, we had gotten connected to a mastermind community for residential assisted living. Sorry, side tangential story, but the reason I'm really passionate about assisted living is because my dad had early onset dementia. He was in a nursing home for 7 years before he passed away. We were low income, so it really wasn't a great facility. So going through that experience, I was always very passionate about this space. This was something that was happening while me and Aaron were together. Right before we got married, he passed away. So it was something that had impacted me, and I knew that I did want to give back to that space, but I didn't know how. But we got connected to a community, and I realized that we could do this, and so we decided to go on that route. What we learned during that time, the systems that we built under constraint when we were balancing a lot of different things, we were kind of laying the tracks as the train was rolling. But those are the systems that actually held and help us execute today. If you build systems under ideal conditions, they might not hold up under stress. So try to build your systems around what your life is now. Aaron is definitely the let's take action. We'll figure it out as we go. And I'm definitely what you might refer to as the hesitant partner. I want to know about all the implications and what's the risk that we're taking before we get into that. And at the beginning of this partnership, it created some friction. But what we've learned over time is that having a partner that kind of fills your gaps and is a good complement to you, that's when you're going to be a holistic, effective team. Don't think of those differences as weakness. Think of them as a strength. So what worked for us in our partnership, and I know everybody's different, but I wanted to be involved in the business. I didn't want him to just try and convince me of something. And when you involve your partner and you educate them, that can help bring them along on this journey. Giving the hesitant partner a role that plays to their strengths to help build confidence and realize, so, I grew up low income and I had never been around real estate before we got into it. But getting those reps in and doing those early deals and learning the business over time has really given me the confidence to now lead our next project. And trying to have a shared understanding rather than equal enthusiasm for every project or deal is totally fine. Your partner does not have to be as excited as you are about this single family rental on the perfect street in the perfect location or the storage facility. But if they understand what that is going to help achieve, then they can still be on board with you. Aaron does coaching with a lot of different types of clients, and a question that he gets often is, what's the level of deal understanding that my spouse needs in order for me to move forward? How can I bring my spouse along on this journey with me? And so for us, what I want to know is, what's the downside to this deal? What's the exit plan if things go south? And what's the exit plan? Like, what's the plan for the future? What is the end result of this? And what's our exposure in terms of risk? If I know the answers to those questions, I can feel good about moving forward with him. Him and I also divide our roles in terms of our strengths, like I mentioned before. Aaron is very much out on the forefront, networking, making relationships, and he also is the strategic operations finance mind behind our business. And I learned that I love finding deals. I still look at Zillow, actually. You can find deals on Zillow. I like doing design. I have become versed in ground-up development now with our new project that we're doing. I love doing due diligence. And I'm the type of person that I use my intuition a lot when I make decisions. For me, that works. It doesn't work for everybody. A lesson that we learned is that the cautious partner often protects the partnership from over-leveraging and can act as a safeguard.
I'll just say that typically when we blow past her intuitive halt sign, it hasn't worked out. Go figure.
I'll literally be like, this doesn't feel right. And if we go forward and a couple weeks later, we're like, oh, shoot, nope. I've learned to listen to my voice a little bit more. It's not always right, but another thing that I've really enjoyed getting involved with, and Aaron is the one that pulled me into it, is masterminds, investor groups, rooms where you're not the weird ones. I've heard that referenced a couple times today. Find your people. It seems like you guys have all found your people, so way to go. And you really do need to do that. You need to find your community. And that's how you can find partners too. I know that we're talking a lot about being spouses and being married, but what I truly believe, it doesn't have to be a spouse, but I do truly believe that you need a partner in your work. One person working solo, you really need that holistic team. You need another set of eyes. I believe that.
So action creates opportunity. We've talked about that, right? Not waiting for the perfect moment that will never come, finding it in your heart to take action, even when you're not sure how it's going to play out, and trusting yourself to solve those problems. Problems, being the operative word, are inevitable. I believe it's number 5. I can't quite remember, but the Zuber's principles that are posted upstairs, you can't avoid hard. I think one of the worst things that could possibly happen is to avoid hard for too long, because it trains you to think that that's normal. And in a long journey of real estate, it's not, right? You have to be willing to weather the storms. So building that muscle of resilience is what's going to keep you in the game long enough to realize the benefits of the action that you take. So over the last 3 years, and really 5, we've had no shortage of change. These beautiful twin boys arrived in our lives in 2023, and it was an absolute blessing. It completed our family in so many ways that we didn't even realize. But what it also caused was our entire financial life flipped upside down. 5 years ago, we were dual income, no kids, and we were able to invest and save our money and buy rental properties, and we did one rental at a time. Actually, I meant to apologize to Zuber because we bought 2 rentals at a time in that other package. But, we were able to do the slow and steady, just kind of layering on, and we thought we were going to ride that path, for 15 years, kind of like you hear people talk about, like you model out on a spreadsheet. But life isn't linear. We learned that very much so, and we ended up moving across the country because we couldn't afford to live where we were living. Daycare for 3 kids in Washington State was going to be $7,400 a month, which was more than double our mortgage. And, of course, there's also the cost of raising and feeding children. So as our goals and our lives refactor, not to mention that this amazing woman bore 3 children in 25 months, there's a lot of change. And yes, that's worth some applause, I think. But amidst all the emotional processing of all this change and welcoming these children into our life, we had to refactor everything. And through that, the math changed, which means that our strategy needed to change too. Only problem is we didn't know what it was going to change to. We actually, at the peak of our portfolio from those 8 properties, were collecting about $18,000 a month in rent. After debt service, there was about $10,000 left over. We were diligent about stashing at least half of that away. And so we had about $5,000 of net cash flow that we could use for our lives, which we were very proud of. That was something that we had worked really hard to build. Unfortunately, we had put all of our own money into the down payments. We didn't do anything creatively. There's nothing wrong with that. But in our situation, all of a sudden, 90% of our net worth was trapped in home equity. We had no way to access it. I forget exactly when it came up earlier, but the lock-in effect, I think it was Jason talked about. The lock-in effect, we had all these low interest rates and we didn't want to get out of them. And so we really had to change everything about the way we approached real estate. And Andrea mentioned her, the story with her father and what we went through there. We were coming fresh off that. We had these 2 homes that were leased to assisted living operators. So luckily, we found a way to align our next chapter of our life behind our passion. We stumbled further into the rabbit hole of residential assisted living. And we realized over time that not only could it solve every financial goal that we've ever had, but much, much more importantly, this was a way for us to give back and prevent people from going through what Andrea's father went through. It was a way for us to provide a home-like environment for people to age with dignity. It was a way for us to involve other people in the process. It was a way for us to build teams and build a hopefully scalable model that we can bring to other people in the country. And it was the perfect alignment of everything that we were looking for. It took a lot of discovery and turmoil and trying a few things that didn't work to get there. But thankfully now we're under construction on these 2 homes. So this is a picture. We are working with a mentor, which I, by the way, always suggest you at least try and copy something that's worked if you're going to try something new. So we worked with a mentor who's built, this is a picture of his buildings in Georgetown, Texas, just north of Austin. And we're modeling off of that, and we've adapted that with a local architect. And here's a rendering of one of the 2 buildings that we're building in Tomball, Texas, a suburb just north of Houston. So we're building 2 separate 16-bedroom homes. They're 10,000 square foot ranch-style homes, 16 bedroom, 16 private bathroom, and nice big, tall ceilings, nice common areas, a couple of visiting areas. It has some luxuries that you might find at a big box facility. By the way, we don't use that word. We call it the F word. Instead of having to go into that big box facility, you can go into a home and really feel like you're living closer to a normal life. So in order to bring this project to life, we had to do all sorts of things that made us uncomfortable, including we raised just under $3 million. This was our first time ever raising outside capital. There were 37 different entities and 50 different individual human beings that we had to not only earn the trust of, which we don't take for granted for a moment, but we had to answer all their questions. And this was a big, risky development project. And there was all sorts of things. There are more things in people's minds that could go wrong than could go right. And so we had to learn how to grow into the type of people that could convey the confidence and build the plan that could work. And so That was no walk in the park, but that's not the most important part of what we're telling here, because 5 days after we raised the last penny, the bank pulled out again. We had a pre-approval from them. Every indication, they actually said, come back and send us a note once you have proof of funds for all the investor funds. We sent it to them, and then I got a call from them and said, we're no longer interested in moving forward with the project. So if you recall, that happened to us earlier in a similar situation with those 2 single-family homes, except the stakes were much higher. We had just collected and spent multiple months gaining the trust of people that they were going to trust us to take their money and not only preserve and protect it, but multiply it. So now we had to figure out what we were going to do. And this was a really, really dark moment for our family, right? This was one of those moments. I appreciate so much everything Fred was talking about with alignment and just looking inside yourself and figuring out what kind of person you want to be when you are faced with these types of moments. And I remember we weren't in the same place when I got that phone call, but that night when we looked each other in the eyes and everything that we had worked towards, all this realignment, all this refactoring, and all the hard work, and we weren't ready to let that die. We had spent over $200,000 at that time in non-refundable pursuit costs, architects, civil engineers, bank fees, legal fees, all that. And if this fell apart, it would have been absolutely devastating for our family. We would have had to sell off a bunch of assets and pay it all off. And we started gaming out these scenarios, and it sunk to the bottom of our stomach. But thankfully, after a little bit of processing, we went out, and just the very next day, we reached out to, it was like 10 different banks. We started pitching. We said, hey, we have this appraisal. We have investor funds. We have this rock solid project. We built this amazing team. And I'll fast forward a bit to say that we were able to actually get banks to bid against each other. And we ended up with a bank providing even better terms than the one that left us hanging. So the point, I'll circle back to, right, is that the resilience is the skill that's going to keep you alive through those dark moments. Because if we had cut our losses and given up, we would be having a very different conversation right now. And by the way, this speaking engagement was booked while this was all happening, right? And we were wondering what kind of story we'd be telling here on February 14th, 2026. And I'm glad it's this one and not the other one. So you might be asking what any of this has to do with one rental at a time, or single family, or buying your first rental, or bias for action, any of that stuff, right? Because maybe that project feels unrelatable in certain ways. But I assure you that first 5 years that Zuber always talks about, where there's bumps and scrapes and bruises that are not only expected, they're necessary to build all the skills and the resilience that we talked about. We don't take those for granted at all. And I frankly don't believe that we could have endured some of the things we just shared had we not gone through that. We had built that portfolio. The skills of buying real estate, it's a skill. You learn it. You learn how to talk to lenders. You learn how to analyze deals. You learn how to evaluate risk. You learn how to deal with people. You learn how to network. You learn all these skills. And if you keep showing up every day, it gets better and better. You're not going to always have an easy path, but that foundational phase, I will never forget, and I will never, ever, ever take it for granted. I believe that truly was critical to getting us not only to where we are now, but just giving us confidence to take that bigger swing.
All right. What would get my spouse excited about this? So Aaron meets with a lot of folks and they're trying to bring their spouse along on this journey with them. So what I have learned over the course of my real estate journey is that there's a lot more to it than single family rentals. There's a lot of different types of real estate ownership. And Aaron and I, our passion is assisted living and memory care, but there's all of these other different types of real estate investing where you can make an impact in other people's lives. So for me, that's what I want out of my life. I want to create a positive impact on the world before I leave it. I want to help other people that maybe have experiences like mine. And so that was always my life goal. I wanted to build wealth to make my life easier and make my children's life easier. But to me, money is a tool to be able to have peace of mind and feel security. Growing up, I was pretty much constantly stressed about money growing up in a low-income household. So by the time I was in my 20s, I was already exhausted and feeling like I needed to retire. No lie. So I wanted to be able to do something that didn't feel like work, and I also wanted to make sure that I could support my family and not be worried about those things. Group housing, sober living, even daycare facilities, affordable housing. Those are all ways that you can invest in real estate and provide housing for people that need it. Daycare facilities, if you're really passionate about childcare, it's a really important needed service for people. So those are all just different types of investing that I really didn't think about before. And not everybody wants to operate a 24/7 business. So the model that unlocks this for a lot of people is the lease to operator model. I heard this mentioned earlier too in another presentation. You own the real estate and you rent it to a company. And this is actually a way that you can reduce your vacancy as well. The company is usually the one doing the leases with the individual tenants, if that's how the business is modeled, or they're running the business day to day out of your property. And so that was a real unlock for us here in Vegas, obviously. And then when we realized I was going to leave W-2 and I wanted to go all in the business, and this is something that's been a passion of mine, and I have a background in nonprofit and human development, so it made sense for us to be the operator as well. And that's why we're doing it that way. But you definitely don't have to do it that way. And usually you can charge over market rent for these types of properties.
So we've been throwing a lot at you over the last 25, 30 minutes, and obviously some of it you might feel like you can relate to, and some of it maybe not. But there's a few key themes that we just want to reiterate, because at the end of the day, this was a waste of time if you can't take something away. So that concept of own your upside, that I kind of came to that realization in one of the darkest moments of my life, that we realized we were hitting up against the ceiling, that we had run out of ways to capture value to what we were putting in. Everyone in this room is already doing that, but I encourage you to figure out what that means to you. That was one of the most powerful unlocks in my life. Imperfect action, I've already hammered this a million times, but there is no perfect. And I'm happy to talk to anybody who might be feeling like they're deliberating on a decision that they can't make, because I promise you there's a way to make it. And it's okay if the answer is no. Just get out of maybe land. Action expands the surface area of your luck. I really challenge people to think about luck differently. Luck is a result of where you are in the moments that you exist, and you put yourself in different situations that can create said luck. Resilience is the real skill. We already talked about that, but do not run away from the hard moments. Lean into them. Understand who you are. Understand how you deal with them, and don't be afraid of them, because the sun will continue to rise tomorrow, and you will figure it out. Systems built under constraint. Zuber's 20 minutes of daily discipline, when I first heard that, and I was grateful and lucky to have him on my podcast a couple years ago now, and he told me a story about how he started writing a daily newsletter at his work long before ORAS started, and that resonated with me so much, because to become the type of person that does something every single day in perpetuity, that's no longer doing something, that's being someone. And so that stuck with me so much, and it has become a true part of my identity too. Cramming for 3 hours once a week on the weekend and possibly skipping that every 2 to 3 weeks is not becoming somebody else. Doing something every day is. Couples can do this together. So again, you might be looking at the stage thinking, well, I can't relate to you guys. You're building a business hand in hand. You're doing development, all this stuff that I'm not even interested in. This is not meant to be like us. This is meant to be lean into your own relationship. Figure out what it is that lights your partner up. Figure out what ways you can connect and relate to them. And remember what she said, equal enthusiasm is not the barometer of whether you are aligned. It is support and unconditional love for each other. And one of the things that my parents told me about marriage and partnership was, the true goal of a marriage is for each person every day to wake up feeling like they are the lucky one. And I can tell you with certainty, I feel like the lucky one every day when I wake up.
All right, well, I feel like I'm the lucky one. So I guess we're doing something right, maybe.
Real estate can exist at the intersection of passion and impact, right? For us, we love single-family rentals. We believe that that is providing a valuable service to society, but we felt a higher calling towards assisted living for all the reasons we already explored. Find whatever your passion is and what won't feel like work, lean into it, and talk about it. Tell the story. Say why you're doing what you're doing. People are really attracted when they feel authenticity around what you're doing, and you would be really surprised how much better it feels when you can really lean into that. And lastly, this is a little more tactical, but this lease to operator strategy, once we found out about it, once you see it, you can't unsee it. It's a really extraordinary way to continue to contribute to these impact-driven businesses while still just being a landlord. You have to learn a few new skills. It is absolutely complex. It's much harder to get lending. There are higher barriers to entry, but there are much, much higher rewards if you're willing to endure and learn. And if anybody's interested in that, I'd be more than happy to talk about it. Last thing I'll say, which is kind of just what we said at the very beginning, make sure you understand that the portfolio that you're currently building is a reflection of the life that you're optimizing for. So whatever grind you're on right now, make sure it's in service of the outcome and the end goal of where you want to be, and everything will work out. And we're happy to take some questions now.
Oh, we already got questions. Good.
Hi.
Hi.
So I'm wondering, are these like much longer extended leases then? Because people are living there, like they're probably going to live there forever, the rest of their lives, like 3 to 5 year leases. And what type of like lending is it? Just commercial lending that you get for that?
So there's two different scenarios. One would be where you own and operate the business, which is what we're developing. So we will own one company that owns the real estate, and we'll have another operating company that leases from it. And it's basically a lease with ourselves. The second is that lease to operator strategy where we own the real estate, but we lease with another company. So I have a clarifying question. Are you talking about the lease with the operator, or are you talking about with the residents?
So yeah, not the residents, the as the owner of the property, how long are your leases with the company operating the business?
So typically, we have seen no less than 5-year lease terms. And the intention when somebody moves in with one of these businesses is for them to stay long term. It's extremely, to your point, very, very, very disruptive if you have to move a whole house of people who are receiving 24/7 care out and into another home. So there's mutual interest in stability. Obviously, you have to protect yourself. Like in our case, we're very passionate about the quality of care. And if somebody's operating in our home to substandard care, that's not going to fly. So you have protections in your lease for things like that. But generally speaking, it's a very mutually beneficial arrangement, and it's very long-term.
And the leases generally, you should do this, have an escalator clause year over year. So you're locking someone into a long-term lease, but you're also locking them into that increase year over year to protect yourself, of course. Now, right now we're in a 5-year lease and the escalator didn't keep pace with market rent, so that can happen too. But yeah, in general, it's a good deal for both.
Okay. And you said the lending was commercial lending or?
So if you own and operate the business, you can use what we did, which is an SBA loan. I know Bo's floating around somewhere in here. There's a SBA broker in here that can tell you all about those products. But because that's a business you're starting, the lease operator is much more complex in that sometimes, depending on the state and city, it can be required for commercial zoning. And in that case, you cannot qualify for residential leases. So more often than not, it will be a commercial loan. But there are certain circumstances like those 2 properties we bought here in Vegas that are single family homes. Those we use residential. So it's very situational.
Okay.
I would say though,
Depending on the size of it and stuff,
Exactly.
I imagine. Okay. Thank you.
All right, Jessica, before you go, I'm going to give a shout out to the folks watching on Zoom. There's 45 people been watching all day. How about that, huh? Woo! So I'm not sure who's going to answer this question, but let me read it to you. If you receive different advice from several mentors on a high-level decision, how do you filter what action to take?
So we've grown to think of the mentors and the coaches and people in our life as a board of advisors of sort. So there's also a difference, right? Like we showed that we're working with a mentor to do development and we're copying his building and adapting it locally. That's an example of someone I would listen to verbatim, right? Because you of course, we have creative deviations with design and things like that, but our goal is to take his house that can get licensed and build it in our market and get licensed. So that's an example of direct taking, advice. When people are giving general advice on someone else's life, I actually am so glad this question came because I think when people give advice, they're doing it with limited information. Nobody knows you and nobody knows your marriage and your family better than you. And so you have to contextualize that advice and bring it into the lens of your own life. So I think, blindly following advice, especially if it's kind of higher level, is not a great idea. Take that perspective into account, especially if it's someone you deeply respect. But I think we think for ourselves, in the culmination of all the perspectives that we collect.
Yeah, it also makes me think about using your intuition, right? If a mentor gives you advice and it just literally does feel wrong, or you're like, wait a second, that does not jive with my own values, beliefs, get a second opinion. Use your own intuition. Be true to yourself. Don't let somebody steer you to do something that's against your own values or your personality. Have confidence in yourself and who you are.
I use her intuition, to be clear. What's up, Chester?
Thank you again, Aaron and Andrea. So this had to think about this for a little bit because you were talking about action and having that bias towards action. So as a recovering person from analysis paralysis, what is the sweet spot, for lack of a better phrase? Like, you know, in terms of like, you got to have some information, but you don't want to get to a point where you're like, I know everything that I need to know, you know, for whatever reason, whether it's comfort or whatnot. What is that sweet spot? Do you feel like maybe like you know about half of what you need to know, maybe 60%, 70% before you're like, okay, I'm ready to pull the trigger? And then what type of conversations, you know, did you guys have in terms of like when you're ready to, you know, pull that trigger?
So I think it's important to know what personality type you have. Are you analytical? Are you intuitive, right? Like there are personality tests you can take to try and understand. And this is very important if you're getting into partnerships, because if you get into a partnership where everyone is thinking mainly intuitively and nobody's analyzing, then you can get in a lot of trouble, especially if there's multiple of you, like everyone's getting excited and nobody's like gut checking, right? So some of it is just simply about knowing yourself. I can tell a little bit about your personality by the fact that you're speaking in percentages instead of feelings, right? And that's not a bad thing. It's part of knowing yourself, right? So that's my commentary, but I want to know your answer.
Well, okay. So what I would say to that is, you know what keeps you up at night, right? Like, you know what stresses you out the most. You need to be able to sleep at night. Think about the things that stress you out, the questions that you need answered in order to sleep well at night. If you've answered all those questions and you're feeling good about the deal, that's probably a good indicator that you can go for it, right? Or if you have identified what you need to learn and you know how to get that information and you're confident about your ability to do it, then that sounds like you should go for it and take that action, right? Again, I keep talking about intuition, and it's not a scientific thing, but if it's something that keeps you up at night and you just can't, you don't know enough. You need to know that one answer in order to move forward, right? Like that kind of tells you a little bit.
Chester, you're also one of the most active people in this community, and you do a great job. Like I've 2 years in a row now seen you stand up and ask questions to every single person, which means you are gathering perspective, you are listening. And like I would also, if you're stuck, lean on other people, not to make the decision for you, but to help inspire you and get around people that are taking action so that it starts to, you absorb that into your world too. And I applaud you for asking so many questions. I've always admired that about you.
Thank you.
Hi. I'm also Vegas local, so
Awesome.
Go Knights.
yeah, right. I have a question. Where do you find these lease to operate like people to help rent out your homes or whatever? Where do you find them, and what kind of buy box are you hunting for these smaller homes, like a 4 and a single story, or what?
So I'll answer in the inverse. The buy box, one of the ways you have to kind of think about these businesses and whether they're going to make sense is whether these people can afford to hire enough staff to competently care for the people that are in the homes. And oftentimes in a 4-bedroom house, if you can only charge, let's say $3,000 or $4,000 a month per bed, you're literally mathematically not going to be able to pay people 24/7, right? So you have to do some validation of what kind of market rates do people pay for, in our case, memory care, assisted living, and you do the math. And this is one of the skills we've learned, is how to make a business plan for an operator, even if our plan is to lease to an operator, because we need to know if their business can survive. Otherwise, that 5-year lease we're signing is going to fall apart, right? So some of it is about learning that. And in that instance, there's things like staffing ratios and there's certain thresholds where you kind of end up overpaying for payroll or underpaying. There's a little bit of a science to just understanding that. So the smaller houses oftentimes don't work as well. And as to where you find the operators, because I know we're running short on time, it's there are a lot of people that want to run businesses like this, but they don't have the capital or they don't have the skills. They don't hang out with Zuber and Chester and all y'all and learn all the skills. And they just have a big heart and they want to serve people. And so there are people looking for this. There are operators that want to expand. We just yesterday came across an operator that was very huge heart and just wants to run the business. They're out there. You can research. There's rehab centers and hospitals. It's a lot of networking and just kind of getting in the right rooms. One thing I'll say, I know there's never enough time to ask questions, so we have a QR code up here. We're going to run another little follow-up session, just the two of us, on Tuesday. And you can sign up right there. We're not going to sell anything. Anything that you have questions about, rental properties, assisted living, whatever, we'll be happy to take it.
Yeah, we can talk a little bit more about that buy box. Single story is definitely one, but yeah, we can go more into that.
So the last thing I'll say on this as we kind of wrap this session up is I really do believe that some of you in this room are on a mission that's bigger than I can even dream. And I knew last year on Monday that I was going to bring these two up here because they're actually doing it and they've been through a lot. So again, Aaron and Andrea, here you goes your belt. Celebrate.
Michael, we actually have a quick gift for you too. We have some white label bourbon from the assisted living company that we're starting, and we wanted you to have it. So
This will be on my shelf. And my view.
Thank you very much. Of course.